I've run a software consultancy for the better part of 3 years, and I have hired freelancers, full-time people, agencies, good ones, bad ones, fired many, and this is a video essentially whether you should hire to a full-time person, a freelancer, or an agency. This is a question a lot of business owners have, and so this is essentially how I approach this question based on my experience. To keep it very, very simple, I believe that you want full-time hires for core functions, you want freelancers to try things, and you want agencies to learn things. That, I think, is my best framework on this kind of stuff. Now, let me take you through the pros and cons of each one. Full-time hires, you want them for core functions because if you outsource a core function, it is an extremely high risk to your business. If you outsource something that is absolutely core to your business, so for example, if you run a SaaS business and you outsource all of your tech, it's going to be a disaster eventually because that tech agency doesn't have the entire alignment with your firm and your vision, right? You need those core functions in-house. But full-time people also are a liability in terms of salaries. It's riskier for you to hire them because you have to keep paying them, but also they are harder to train if you've never hired that kind of person before. And so this is where I think agencies can be a good hire if you want to learn things. Good agencies have walked the walk many, many times. And so when you go to a good agency, they have done the thing that you want to do many, many times. And they just do that for a bunch of clients. And so they know how to do it quite well usually. And so they are great to learn. They're usually a little bit more expensive, but in terms of quality, that's going to be a pretty good place to start. Now, there are bad agencies. I've hired some really, really bad agencies. The things that I would say to avoid making bad hires is focus on attention to detail. Look at the agency and really try to analyze, are they paying enough attention to the small details? Even upfront, when they email you, when they message you, when they type messages, are they professional? Are they paying attention to the small details? Because when they don't do it up front, when they do the proposal, whatever, if you can see lots of little flaws in your project, there are going to be lots of little flaws as well. And that's going to add up over time. And it's going to be really, really frustrating to work with them. The other thing I would say as well is look for any risk reversal or guarantees that you can get from them. If you can have some level of risk reversal when working with an agency, that can remove most of the downside potential from working. When I've worked with agencies without any risk reversals and I didn't pay enough attention to details, I sourly regretted it, honestly. There were some agencies that I hired that were really, really bad. Now, when they're good agencies, I think they're an absolute superpower because you can learn from them because they've done it so many times from so many other clients. They know the flow, they know how it works. And so I think they can be a superpower, but you need to be careful about who you hire. One of the things that I realized is like through this pain of hiring other agencies and getting it all fucked up, I realized that I wanted to implement a risk reversal of my own so that other people didn't have the same pain that I had. We have an essentially money back guarantee within the first month with our agency where if you're not happy with the work, you can get it back. And I think you should find this kind of thing in any agency you hire if possible. Many of them don't do it, but if there is a possibility, I think it's always nice. The next thing is freelancers. So freelancers are really good to try things because they're usually the cheapest in terms of cheapest non-committing options where you don't commit to a full-time salary, but they still help you work something out. And also usually they've done the thing before a couple times. It's not as much as an agency most of the time, but they're somebody that you can get relatively quickly to try things out and things like that. I would say you want to look for the same things as in an agency. Like there are also some really bad freelancers. I've hired bad freelancers, but if you look for their attention to detail, usually if they're attentive to the small things in the project, it'll go relatively well. Any risk reversals are always a bonus as well. Now, I will say, freelancers are good to try small things. Doing big things with freelancers most of the time doesn't work because if you have to build a team of more than one freelancer, building a patchwork of freelancers in my experience doesn't work well at all. And the reason I think that is because it is a bunch of people who've never really worked together. And so building a team dynamic and making sure that all flows smoothly, it's the first time they're doing it. And so all the mistakes of the first time, you're going to have to suffer through those and pay for those as well. And so in that respect, if you need a team, usually you probably want to go with something a bit more like an agency, whereas like kind of mixing and matching random people who've never met might not work ideally well. And you know, if one of them doesn't like the team, then you got to replace them. It's a whole issue and you're not even getting these people as full-time hires like in the long run. So I think that can save some people some tremendous amount of pain. I would also say freelancers are great to try things before you bring somebody in full-time. For example, if you want to try having a design function or a content writing function within your company, hiring a freelancer first can be a really nice way to essentially try having somebody operating almost as an in-house person, but not quite there yet. I've also had situations where I had a contractor for a project and then I realized they were good and I made them full-time offers. And at this point, I'm confident in their full-time offer because I've seen their work in a project already. And those have been some pretty good hires for me. So starting out as a freelancer and then transitioning them into a full-time person when you know that you're going to need a lot of that functionality, whatever they do, can work really well. And I think having them commit to you as a full-time hire is really good if you want to retain them for a long time. And if you want to get the best quality of work out of them, they need to be committed to you. If they're doing like 10 other clients, clients, you're just one of 10, and so you're not going to get all of the attention you need. And eventually, if that function is really important to you, I believe you should bring that in-house. This is essentially my framework on how to do these things. I will look to hire freelancers when I need something that I'm trying out and still figuring out a lot of. And agencies can help you figure things out faster, but they're a lot more expensive. And so when something is cost prohibitive, freelancer I think is the next best option. But I also think that freelancers should be to try things out and to start. But eventually you want to transition to something which is full-time if you're using this on a repeated basis consistently, because you're paying some level of premium for the risk that they take on that you cancel as a client. Full-time people are cheaper per hour, whereas freelancers are more expensive per hour. If you find yourself constantly using something over a course of a month with freelancers, investing to have that in-house is probably a worthwhile investment. But if you don't use that super regularly, then yeah, you can probably stick to a freelancer and you'll be fine. I run an agency myself, and I've hired other agencies, fired other agencies, hired freelancers, full-time people, fired full-time freelancers, whatever. And I really wish that I could have figured this part out a lot earlier. Making the wrong hires can be extraordinarily painful and expensive mistakes. I would say that's one of the most common mistakes in business. I think any business owner will have gone through it. I'd love to help any business owner that I can avoid that mistake as well. Feel free to comment if you have any questions.